Okay, let's unpack this. We are driving straight into Manitowoc County, Wisconsin.
Right.
Picture a place that feels pretty ordinary,
Right.
sprawling farmland. And then there's the Avery salvage yard, this huge, almost chaotic landscape of rusted cars, heavy machinery.
Yeah, it's quite a sight.
And this quiet, unassuming setting becomes the stage for, well, maybe the most controversial legal saga in modern American history.
Absolutely. And the man right at the center of this whirlwind is Steven Avery.
Mm-hmm.
His life story, it's become this really profound, contradictory symbol in the justice system. First, this rare instance of hope, exoneration after a long, wrongful conviction.
21 years.
18 years. And then later, it flips into this stark warning about systemic bias and how truth itself can be contested.
So our mission today really is to explore these unnerving questions the case raises. Questions about power, evidence, integrity.
And what happens when that pursuit of justice kind of clashes violently with institutional self-preservation? We're drawing just from the sources you've shared here.
Okay, so to understand the conflict now, we really have to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Way back in 1985.
Yeah.
Avery, he was a local guy, had a history of some minor run-ins with the law.
Sort of known to them.
Right. He gets convicted of sexual assault and attempted murder.
Yeah.
The victim, Penny Burnson, was attacked while jogging near Lake Michigan.
And what's fascinating here isn't just that he was convicted, but how quickly the system seemed to decide he was guilty, even with strong evidence pointing, well, away from him.
Like what kind of evidence?
Well, Avery always maintained his innocence. His family, friends, they provided solid alibi testimony, placed him miles away.
Oh, but
But the conviction rested almost entirely on Penny Burnson's eyewitness identification, and our sources confirm this ID was later deemed deeply flawed.
Deeply flawed. That's a critical detail. What made it so unreliable?
Well, the source suggests it was kind of a classic case of mistaken identity under terrible stress, obviously. And it was possibly made worse by suggestive police procedures. Like, Burnson apparently identified Avery from a lineup only after she'd overheard local law enforcement mentioning his name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, basically labeling him as a likely suspect, the local troublemaker narrative.
So that narrative, the familiar face, maybe fit the authorities' preconceptions better than looking for someone unknown.
It seems that way. It fit better than, pursuing the actual perpetrator who was unknown at the time.
So relying on that shaky testimony, maybe some confirmation bias, Avery gets sentenced to 32 years.
And he spends 18 years locked up, all the while protesting his innocence.
And during those 18 years, technology catches up.
Exactly. That's the inflection point. Science intervenes. In 2003, new DNA testing, powerful stuff that just didn't exist in '85, gets applied to the forensic evidence from the Burnson attack.
And the results?
Stunning, really. The DNA absolutely did not match Steven Avery.
Wow. Who did it match?
It matched a guy named Gregory Allen, a convicted sex offender already known to authorities, actually suspected of similar crimes in the area back then.
So Avery's exonerated. He's released, walks free in 2003. There are cameras. He's walking back into a world he hasn't seen in almost 2 decades.
Yeah, quite the moment.
And he immediately becomes this symbol, the poster child for wrongful conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And because of his case, Wisconsin lawmakers actually start drafting major criminal justice reform legislation, trying to prevent this kind of thing from happening again.
His freedom was huge, genuinely seismic. But that happiness, it came tangled with immediate explosive conflict.
Which raises the question, what happened right after his release?
Well, Avery didn't waste time. He filed a massive civil lawsuit, $36 million.
Against whom?
Against Manitowoc County, its sheriff, and several specific officials who were involved in his original wrongful conviction back in '85.
Okay, $36 million for a small rural county. That's an existential threat, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just the money, though that's huge. It's careers on the line, institutional reputations.
And personal accountability for those officers who, for 18 years, had insisted they got the right guy.
Exactly. The sources really underscore the enormous tension this created. The local law enforcement community, especially those named in the suit, they were under immense professional and financial pressure.
So this legal fight, it creates this deep well of hostility towards Avery.
You could say that. And that hostility, that pressure, it's all very much active when just 2 years after his exoneration, the whole situation just flips.
Again.
That
2-year window, that's what's so jarring about this timeline.
Yeah.
He goes from exonerated reform hero back to prime suspect.
It's whiplash.
On October 31st, 2005 Halloween, a 25-year-old photographer, Teresa Hallback, goes missing.
Right. She worked for Auto Trader magazine. And her last confirmed appointment that day, the Avery salvage yard. She is there to photograph a minivan Steven Avery was selling.
The last place she was confirmed to be seen alive.
Mm-hmm. Within days, her Toyota RAV4 is found. Partially hidden, actually, on the Avery property.
And then?
Then came the discovery of bone fragments, found near a large burn pit behind Avery's trailer.
So the location of the vehicle, the fragments, it immediately focuses the entire investigation solely on the Avery property.
And specifically on Steven Avery himself.
Now, this is where the core issue of this second investigation starts, and where the sources begin to raise some really serious concerns. It's the conflict of interest.
Absolutely central. Manitowoc County officers, the very people being sued by Avery for $36 million, were heavily involved in the search and the evidence collection for the Halbach murder.
Even though they were defendants in his lawsuit.
Exactly. That decision just immediately muddied the waters. Now, officially, another jurisdiction was the lead.
Calumet County, I think.
Yes, Calumet County. But the presence and involvement of Manitowoc deputies finding critical evidence, it created instant skepticism.
And this is where the defense later argues, look, the motivation to frame Avery, to basically make that massive, ruinous lawsuit disappear, was just overwhelming.
That became the core of their argument, yes.
And the evidence controversy followed pretty quickly, didn't it? Sources detail specific items turning up under, well, let's say, highly suspicious circumstances.
Circumstances the defense definitely called too convenient.
Like what? What's the prime example?
Probably the most contested item was Teresa Halbach's car key. The R4 key.
Okay, wait about it.
It was allegedly found by a Manitowoc officer in Avery's bedroom, specifically lying on the floor right beside his bed.
And the issue was?
The issue was it was found only after that same room had already been searched thoroughly multiple times by different law enforcement teams days earlier.
So it just appeared.
That's how the defense portrayed it. They also highlighted that the key allegedly lacked Avery's DNA or even sweat traces you might expect, suggesting, maybe it had been wiped clean and placed there.
Okay, that's one major point of contention. But the deepest controversy around the investigation, arguably, centers on Brendan Dassey.
Yes, Steven Avery's nephew. He was 16 at the time.
What happened with him?
In March 2006, Brendan was intensely questioned by investigators. Now, Brendan had recognized cognitive limitations, learning difficulties,
Right.
Yet he was interrogated for hours without a lawyer present, without a parent present initially.
And those interrogations were recorded.
They were. And the recording subsequently became globally scrutinized. You can watch them. You see his statements shifting, changing multiple times,
Right.
often seemingly prompted directly by leading questions from the investigators.
He starts off hesitant, then gives these vague, changing details, then eventually provides an account of the crime that, well, reportedly contradicts the physical evidence and shifts every time they question him again.
And what's crucial here, legally speaking, is the issue of coercion. The sources show the investigators making what looks like false promises of leniency, suggesting, just tell us the truth. Tell us what we think happened, and you'll be okay. You can go home.
For a vulnerable teenager, especially one with cognitive issues.
That kind of manipulation, it violates the special safeguards required when questioning minors, particularly those with lower IQs. But despite the clear inconsistencies, the problematic nature of the interrogation, Dassey's confession became a centerpiece of the prosecution's case.
Against both him and Avery.
Yes.
So the trials begin in 2007. There were separate trials, right?
Separate trials, yeah.
The prosecution paints Avery as this manipulative killer. Lured Halbach to the property. They rely heavily on finding the RV4 on the property, the bone fragments, and Brendan Dassey's testimony.
And the defense counter-argument was extremely aggressive, they essentially said. Law enforcement, fearing that massive $36 million payout from the civil suit, acted on that bias. They planted key evidence to guarantee Avery's conviction.
They specifically accused them of planting evidence.
Directly. They argued that Halbach's key, a specific bullet fragment, and crucially, blood evidence found in her car, were planted by Manitowoc officers.
Okay, let's dive into the forensic details there, because that's where it gets really technical. What were the main forensic points the defense hit hard on?
Okay, 3 major areas, based on the sources. First, Avery's blood found inside Teresa Halbach's RV4.
Right. How do they explain that?
The defense suggested this blood didn't come from an active bleed during the crime. They proposed it was taken from a vial of Avery's blood collected years earlier, back during his 1985 case, which was still stored in the clerk's office, handled by the sheriff's department.
And how will they prove that?
They argued that testing the bloodstain for EDTA, that's an anticoagulant, a preservative used in lab collection vials but not naturally present in blood inside the body, would prove it came from the vial. Proof of planting.
Was EDTA found?
Well, the state's FBI testing said no EDTA was detected above their threshold, but the defense, and later Zellner, strongly contested the validity and sensitivity of that specific FBI test. So that question mark over the blood source, it remains a huge part of the appeals.
Okay, that's the blood. What was the second key piece?
The bullet. A bullet fragment labeled item BZ was found in Avery's garage months later. It purportedly had Teresa Halbach's DNA on it.
And the defense argument.
They pointed out inconsistencies, like the bullet's condition, the location where it was found, didn't quite seem to match the state's narrative of how Halbach was shot. And crucially, like the key, it was only found after multiple earlier searches of that same garage, involving Manitowoc personnel.
Another conveniently late discovery.
That was the implication.
And the third major point you mentioned, something about absence of evidence.
Exactly. The defense asked, if this brutal murder happened as the state claimed, partly inside Avery's trailer or garage, why was there such a striking lack of Teresa Halbach's DNA or fingerprints in those spaces?
Like on Avery himself or the alleged murder weapon or just around the trailer?
Right. Especially considering the alleged cleanup wasn't perfect enough to remove all of Avery's blood from the car. They argued the near-total absence of the victim's DNA in his living space was inconsistent with the state's story of a violent struggle there.
Despite these arguments, Avery was found guilty. First-degree intentional homicide.
Yeah.
Sentenced to life without parole.
Correct. And Brendan Dassey, in his separate trial, was also found guilty. He also received a life sentence, though with eventual parole eligibility far in the future.
So legally, the cases were decided. But globally, not so much settled, right?
Not at all. In 2015, the world basically reopened the case files via Netflix, the documentary Making a Murderer.
Which was huge.
Massive. The series meticulously detailed all these contradictions, the potential misconduct, the defense's perspective. It just exploded. The case became this global conversation dissected by legal experts, armchair detectives, everyone.
And that public scrutiny brought in new legal firepower for Avery.
Yes, following that immense global attention, Avery's defense was taken over by Kathleen Zellner. She's a renowned wrongful conviction attorney known for her really aggressive science-based approach.
And her strategy has been
to introduce massive amounts of new scientific counter-evidence, challenging basically everything, the ballistics, the decomposition analysis of the bones, re-examining the EDTA claims, testing for DNA on items previously untested.
Has it worked? Has you gotten him a new trial?
Despite filing repeated, very detailed motions suggesting alternative suspects, pointing out forensic inconsistencies, claiming his original trial lawyers were ineffective, the courts have consistently denied Avery's requests for a new evidentiary hearing or a new trial.
Why is that, if there's potentially new evidence?
Well, the legal bar for overturning a jury conviction is incredibly high. It's not just about raising questions. You generally have to definitively prove innocence or a fundamental constitutional violation that impacted the verdict. And the courts, so far, haven't found that her arguments meet that threshold.
Meanwhile, Brendan Dassey. His legal path has been separate and really turbulent too, right?
Extremely turbulent. In 2016, there was a huge development. A federal magistrate judge ruled that his confession was unconstitutionally coerced.
Wow. So he ordered his release.
He did, citing the interrogator's manipulative tactics, the false promises, Brendan's age and vulnerabilities. It looked like a massive win.
That must have felt like huge validation for everyone questioning the confession. You said turbulent. It didn't stick.
No, the victory was very short-lived. The state appealed, and the ruling was overturned by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, sitting en banc, meaning the full court reviewed it.
And they disagreed about the coercion.
They did. The decision was incredibly contentious, actually. The judges were sharply divided on the legal standard for what constitutes a voluntary confession, especially with a vulnerable minor. It really illustrated just how fiercely debated that standard is.
And after that?
His lawyers appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, but they declined to hear the case. So that removed his last real recourse. Brendan Dassey remains imprisoned, despite widespread legal opinion, even among some judges who reviewed his case, that his constitutional rights were violated during that interrogation.
So here we are today. Steven Avery is still incarcerated, still maintaining his innocence. Public opinion is still fiercely divided.
Deeply divided.
And this whole saga, both the 1985 case and the 2005 case, they've exposed some critical cracks in the justice system, haven't they?
Absolutely. From the reliance on unreliable eyewitness testimony back in '85 to the really serious allegations of evidence planting and the documented coercive tactics used against Dassey in the second investigation.
It's this complex narrative that forces us, really, to confront some uncomfortable realities about institutional integrity.
Right. You have a man who was provably wronged by the system once. He sought redress through that huge lawsuit, and then finds himself accused of an even worse crime, while that very lawsuit is actively threatening the institutions investigating him.
And we have to remember, amidst all the legal complexities and the debate, Teresa Halbach's family is still mourning. Her life was taken, and the truth of exactly what happened might be forever obscured by all this legal drama.
That's a crucial point to remember. Their loss is at the heart of this.
The case is now taught in law schools around the world, isn't it? As a kind of cautionary tale.
It is. Because it doesn't just ask if evidence was planted or if a confession was coerced. It asks how easily evidence can potentially shape or be shaped by those in power, especially when powerful institutions have huge financial and reputational stakes in a particular outcome.
Which brings us to maybe the final provocative thought here.
Yeah, I think the saga of Steven Avery reveals that justice isn't always just about finding the objective truth. Sometimes it seems to be about institutional self-protection as well. How can a system that's supposed to protect the innocent function properly when the people within that system face potentially ruinous consequences personally and professionally for admitting past errors?
That's a heavy question.
It is, and this story, it's not going to fade away quietly. It really challenges our concept of finality in a legal system that we know is defined by human error, human bias, and sometimes institutional pressure. It's a haunting reminder of how fragile truth can become.
If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more cases like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video if you found the story compelling, and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in true crime and mysteries. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with all our latest content and join a growing community of curious minds exploring the most fascinating cases. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything.